The Yankees played their final home game of the regular season on Monday afternoon. They won their 79th game of the season. However, we know this, there'll be no postseason for the Bronx Bombers for the first time since 2016. So what will change for the Yanks as we look forward to 2024? Well, New York Post baseball columnist Joel Sherman, he has some thoughts in his latest column, and he joins me now. Joel, always good to see you. Usually we're talking Yankees playoffs or Mets in the playoffs. Neither this time. How you doing?
Yeah, well, it's football season, and the way the two football teams are playing, it might not be that for much longer either. So, I think we're supposed to be morphing into one or the other. Here come the Knicks, I guess.
Yeah, people looking forward to the Knicks. Haven't said that in quite some time, but good for the Knicks.
Yeah.
We'll get to that another day. Joel, on the day that the Yanks were eliminated from the postseason contention, Aaron Judge stated that changes have to be made. When the captain speaks, people are definitely going to listen. What changes do you think Judge was alluding to, and how much of a voice will he have in any changes that are made this offseason?
So he was publicly vague, Dexter. He said he wanted to leave it between him, and he has clearly a pipeline directly to ownership in-house Steinbrenner. I think he'll let himself be known. I think he was frustrated when the Yankees were swept out of the ALCS last year by Houston. So if I were because I talked to lots of people in the clubhouse, I think that they're frustrated on several levels, mainly that the Yankees don't play baseball well. That's why they get eliminated every year when they do make the playoffs. They beat a lousy AL Central team that they overmatch, and then they get up against Tampa Bay or Boston or most often Houston. And those teams are as good as them kind of technically or better, but then they just play baseball better. When Judge was out, it exposed just how unprepared the Yankees were overall as an organization to handle something like that. And I just think that they have to think more about athleticism on both sides of the ball. I think they have to think more about what the scoreboard says, game situation, and not one size fits all for teaching it or playing it.
So you mentioned the one size fits all there. And in your recent column, you talked about how analytics or the Yankees not being flexible with analytics might be impacting the team. Could you talk a little bit more about how the Yankees front office is operating when it comes to analytics?
I always want to be careful is like heavily analytic teams like the Orioles, the Rays, the Astros, these teams are going to be in the playoffs, the Dodgers. So, there's always this demonization of analytics. And I think oftentimes the people who demonize it, if I said, well, give me a sentence on what you're talking about, they couldn't do that. I will say what I think has happened with the Yankees is that they have become so solely focused on theory and gone so hard on each theory that they've landlocked themselves in certain ways. Like the baseball really flew. There was something going on with the baseball in 18 and 19. And the Yankees, for example, went full force on power. It's casino baseball. If you lead the league in home runs, you hit enough of them up and down your lineup, you'll win 60% of your games as if you're counting cards. And don't worry about how bad you look in the other 40%. Now, I would argue that those 40% represent something you're going to face in the playoffs when the kind of good pitching that nullifies, that kind of home run hitting comes. But also, what happens if the ball deadens some? What happens if you change rules where speed, athleticism, diversity matters some? What happens, they went so full force right-handed. The Yankees are one of these organizations, return on investment in a trade. Like, what does a trade look like? Did we win the trade? But are you considering the whole roster when you win the trade? How does it look? The analogy I used in the column you've been nice enough to talk about is I said, if you had a 10-room house and you only thought about maximizing each of the 10 rooms, the house might not look great because the rooms don't work together. Like right. You have to think about the whole house as you're, doing each room. And I think the Yankees, Luke Voigt and Clint Frazier and Miguel Andujar and Gleyber Torres and Gary Sanchez and Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Judge, but they're all right-handed power hitters. Most of them aren't very athletic. You end up with the same thing. If anything changes in the game, you have nowhere to go. And I think, like part of analytics is supposed to be to stay smart and flexible. And I don't think they've stayed smart and flexible enough.
Yeah, you can't have redundancy in the lineup. You want to have some diversity, and you're right, you can't have every room be the same in a house. That's a really good analogy. I think that really fits well to break it down for people. And Joel, we could say that changes to the roster and the front office this offseason are likely to come. If we focus just on the offseason. What changes need to be made there in terms of the front office this offseason, and how do they evolve going forward?
Look, I think at this point, it's pretty clear that Hal Steinbrenner doesn't want to dismiss Brian Cashman, who he looks at as a loyal employee and a successful employee for the last quarter century as a GM and well more than 30 years as an employee of the Yankees overall. The results of the moves of the big moves, especially of the last 3 to 5 years, can make him vulnerable. I think that the owner likes the manager, Aaron Boone, a lot, though I think he's a lot more vulnerable than Cashman. I will say this. None of the moves externally or internally are valuable without change in philosophy, because the Yankees are going to be at the mercy, no matter what they do, that the players under their control have to get better. Anthony Volpe can't hit 200. He's got to hit 260, 270, 280. Oswaldo Cabrera, who was a high IQ kid last year and played well, why did he regress? Why did Nestor Cortez regress this year, even before injury? Why didn't they maximize Carlos Rodon the way the Giants did? Nothing from the outside is going to fix the 2024 Yankees and really the Yankees going forward. They have to fix themselves. What is their demand on young players playing the game well? People could talk about the Martian all they want when he comes back. Is he a good baseball player? We don't know that yet. I know he's got power. I know he's got tools. He's got to be a good baseball player. Everson Pereira, Oswald Peraza, Austin Wells, they've got to work on themselves, whatever decisions they make, and maximize what they have, because that, besides making bad external decisions, what they have had internally has not been fully maximized.
Yeah, we will see what happens in terms of the changes, the internal development for the Yankees. That will be something to watch this offseason. You know who's going to be on top of it. That will be Joel Sherman, New York Post baseball columnist, doing great work for us all the time. Joel, good to talk to you. We'll see what happens this offseason.
All right, Dexter, go Knicks.
Yeah, indeed.